everybody, and welcome back to the Still in Love podcast. This is season 3 and episode number 4. And today we are talking about
who comes first, my spouse or my kids.
It's going to get good today, y'all. This is a very hot topic that is taking place all over social media right now about the placement of your spouse and your kids in a relationship. And I think our standpoint on some of this is going to be from a marriage relationship. So let's get into it.
So who comes first, the spouse or the kids? There's a lot of frustration. There's a lot of frustration that a lot of brothers have, a lot of men have, because they feel as if their wife put the kids before them.
Okay.
And so these brothers just frustrated, like, man, why is it that you put the kids before me and I'm on the back burner, and I feel some kind of way about that.
Yeah.
And so let's speak to that. Let's talk about that. Who should be first? Who do you think should be first in a marriage?
Even initially coming into this conversation, and just from our conversations before we even started recording, I feel a way about these questions, not because I don't think that they need to be asked, but more so because I feel like we are constantly looking for one answer to fix a lot of things that's kind of taking place underneath. Just the mere fact that this question is even having to be discussed, which I think is great on one hand, but another is who's driving this. So for me and personally, I'm a believing woman. I'm a kingdom woman. So to me, my spouse comes first. Mm-hmm. And the way that these questions are being posed is just, hey, guys, let's not get caught up in what's not important. My spouse comes first because in the order in the kingdom, God comes before my spouse.
That's right.
There's a natural flow to the way things need to go. First and foremost is God. Nothing comes before him. Absolutely, period. Nothing. Not even my spouse.
That's right.
It's God
Absolutely.
first. Then it is my spouse. It is him. Then it is my children. They are the individuals that God has allowed me to become one with somebody else. We have participated in an act that causes us to create something. I cannot take what we created and then put that above what was needed in order to create it. I can't do that. I can't do it.
Say that again.
I cannot take something that we created and then place it as a priority over what was needed to create it. No. And I think a part of the debate between men and women, which I often wonder who is behind some of it and what the status of their relationships are, because if we are prioritizing and working really hard at maintaining priority and establishing a culture of priority in our family, within our family unit, prioritizing won't be an issue. Because I love you, it takes nothing away from my love for you to take care of and love on my children. Me loving my children takes nothing away from me loving and working on and in my relationship with you. We often think that if I prioritize something else, or if I this is the example we talked about earlier, if I have 100 units of love and I give you 98 of them, and I give my kids too, that's not how I'm living my life. If I have 100 units, I'm balancing out what's needed here today, and I'm making conscious decisions to keep prioritizing you, but I'm also giving them what they need because they are a priority to me. It's the example of the big rocks that we've talked about before on the podcast. It is everything that's important to me is a rock. And I am placing them, God is first, my spouse, and then my children, and everything else will fill my canister. Everything else fills my jar. But this is what is priority to me. And I think some of the debate is also coming from men feeling like their wives tend to lean more to giving their children what they need versus them. Now, I think in different seasons, you have to juggle that those priorities a little different. When you have small children, especially
Come on,
newborns,
girl. Come on.
when you are both new parents, you have to maneuver your life different. We've talked about this multiple times on this podcast. Whereas when we first had Madison, first time parents, we're new to this thing. We were used to being alone, taking our own time. We wanted to go eat dinner. We could go eat dinner. We wanted to go to the grocery store at 12 and 1 o'clock in the morning. We could do that. You bring somebody else into the equation, and now we're having to juggle between us getting our fun time, our regular just getting in, being into each other time, to now we have to make sure that this child has what they need. And for newborns, they need a lot more of the mom, oftentimes, because if I'm breastfeeding, if it's who's normally sometimes getting up in the middle of the night. I'm not saying that men don't get up. I'm saying as a mom, I'm taking care of most of the nurturing in this season. But again, it's just in this season. So you just have to be more intentional about prioritizing both. Now, some people are going to hear that and they're going to say, I'm giving my kid, my baby, everything, and he's just going to have to understand. And it's like, hey, let's deal with the core of where some of this is coming from. Why are we coming out of the gate upset about prioritizing both? It's almost like there is this, it's coming from a different place. It's coming out of maybe a heart that has experienced some levels of neglect, that has experienced some levels of unmet needs. And now you're working hard to ensure that your children don't feel that, your children don't experience that. If it comes down to it, I'm getting my kids. Oftentimes, where is that coming from? Yeah. Because I don't think your spouse will have a problem with you running to save your kids or do something for your kids. There is this notion or this invisible enemy that we create sometimes within our spouses that it doesn't exist. One example was this. We've talked about earlier we were talking about the serving the plate. We're talking about almost a lot in one podcast, but we just revisited who gets to eat first, my spouse or my children. And I know people have differences of opinion. For some couples, it doesn't matter. For some couples, if you're fixing plates, we're just fixing plates and and everybody eating. That's what's important. For some men, again, we're using the term some. Yeah. For some men, I want to be served first. When we were newly married, I feel like we almost talked about it pre.
Yeah.
But I grew up in a household where my granny was like, a man always eat first. And it didn't matter what man, it was a man. If a man is present, you serve him, you feed him first. And I just remember us talking one time, this was pre-marriage, when you had come over or something, and it was, are you gonna fix his plate? And I was a little hesitant, and she was like, you better get in there and fix that man plate. You better get in there and fix that man plate. And I'm like, okay, like no big deal, because in my mind, okay, no big deal. We get married and you bring it up like, hey, I would like to be served first. It means nothing to me to do that. Okay, if that's what you desire, I'm doing that. If I fix a meal or we're cooking, I cooked, then and especially if I'm serving my whole family, we aren't just fixing our own plates. Yeah, because you asked for it. But that brings up to me another point in communication. If your spouse is not prioritizing you, or if you're feeling some type of way, then you have to talk. You have to communicate. You felt a way about, I didn't think about it, period. Not because it wasn't important to me. I just didn't think about what it is that you might want. It wasn't because I didn't love you. It wasn't because I wasn't submitted to you. It just wasn't something that, I wasn't aware that you even desired that. You communicated, as people have to do. You said, hey, I would like that. I make the decision to honor your request.
That's right.
As your wife. Yep. Hey, if that's what you desire, then that's what I'm going to do. Does it mean that my children don't matter to me? Absolutely not. Everybody's food is hot when I put it on the table. I choose to serve my whole family. I'm serving my husband and I'm serving my kids. I want my daughter to see if that is something that your husband desires, honor that. I want my son to see if it's something that you desire, open up your mouth and say it.
Yep.
And give your wife an opportunity to show honor with that. We're believing sometimes that your spouse has to know everything and know every way to treat you. But some of it, you do teach people how to treat you. Yeah. And if it's something that you desire, then say that. But I think some of these conversations about prioritizing spouse and children it comes down to a matter of we both love our kids. Yeah. We literally love our kids. We love all things our children. Yeah. But there's a place for them. I love you, not more. I love you in a different way anyway. Yeah. But you are a priority to me. And so is my children. And I have to work at keeping the balance of, hey, I love them all. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to give all of them what they need, not neglecting one to give to the other. You understand Absolutely. What I'm saying? And in different seasons, people need different things. Yeah. So there's not one answer to that. Well, there is an answer. My spouse comes first, but there's not going to be one answer to everything. If my child needs me right now and you don't, I'm going to tend to my kids.
Absolutely.
If you need me and they don't need direct one-on-one me, then yes. But again, that's a conversation that I feel like is much deeper than just who comes first. Mm-hmm. It is what is your past experiences telling you and what is speaking to you about the placement of your spouse. And I feel like you want to say something before I bring up us. Why did you get married? Like some of us really, why did we even get married?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's really good. You know, one point that you made about, you know, I'm not big on a lot of, you know, man stuff in terms of I need you to cook every day. I need, you know, the house spotless clean every day. I need everything scrubbed. I need, you know, that's not how I came up. That's not, you know, something that I desire. Mm-hmm. Some men desire that. Mm-hmm. And I think of a man desire a hot cooked meal every night. Yes. You know, that's something you all should talk about on the front end and make that happen. Yes. Or a spotless house if that's his desire, you know. And so for me, you know, whenever you cook, it's fine. Just how we live, how we move. You know, I grew up on fast food, and so, you know, I value a hot cooked meal, but I prefer to go out most of the time. And so anyway, but one of the things that I do desire is for you to serve me first. Mm-hmm. And I think this is important. Now, that's just my desire. Correct. If it's not your man's desire, then let's not create it. Or man, if it's not your desire, don't try to make it your desire because it's somebody else's desire.
Yes.
For me, I think it shows a sense of honor for me. And I appreciate that. And I think especially, you know, sometimes you may have made them, you know, you may have said, okay, I'm getting the kids. I ain't really thinking about, you know, it right now. And that's okay. Mm-hmm. I would like for you to think about that. Mm-hmm. But what's a no for me is if you served another man's plate first, Absolutely. You know, prior, before
totally
you serve.
Understandable.
And so, you know, and still it'll just be a conversation, you know, hey, listen, you know, we're not doing that. But I think those things have to be discussed, and you have honored that. Since we've been married, you've honored that. I've never felt when it was, you know, one of our parents, when it was whoever, it didn't matter.
Yes.
It was you served, you know, you made sure that I was served first. And I think those things are important. I think.
And let me jump in here before we go somewhere else.
I'm still here.
It is, if that is a request by your man and there is something in you that says, I don't want to do that, you have to pull back and say, why am I hesitant to show honor? Why am I hesitant to do something that he's asked me to do? Again, this is how we know that sometimes there's a deeper driver at play and not just, all men want to be all men. Because sometimes if you go down social media, you see these men this, men that. Let's stop with the generalizing all men and all women. Again, that is what you desire as a man. If that's not your husband's desire, and he's okay with you serving the kids first, then do that. Doesn't mean that you're prioritizing them first. It's what we are labeling some of that. It's just simply, I'm serving my family. Yeah. I'm serving my family. We are sometimes just setting up we're using verbiage and terminology that further separates us and creates these invisible boundaries and walls. It's like, How about you just serve your family?
And as we talk about, from a kingdom perspective.
Yes.
And so we're speaking from a kingdom perspective. And so some of this don't apply to some people that may be listening because they may not have a kingdom perspective.
Yes.
The order
Yeah.
is God, your spouse, your children. That's the order from a kingdom perspective. And I think, regardless of how you feel and how you were raised and what you are used to and what you heard on social media, you have to say, listen, I don't take my cues from anything but the word of God.
Yep.
And so when the word of God gives me this blueprint of the order, then that's what I subscribe to.
Absolutely.
And I think it's just that simple. And sometimes it's not easy because of what you saw and what you experienced.
Correct.
Because you may be in a situation where your mom put somebody before you.
Yes.
And you say that, hey, listen, I'm never going to put my husband before my child because I know how that made me feel.
Yes.
So you come into the marriage with this issue.
Yes.
With an issue. That's what you bring into the table. You bring so now you can't really totally submit to your husband because of something that happened in your childhood and how mom wasn't right. Mom made you feel a certain kind of way. The man came over, and when the man came over, she wanted you to be silent and act like you didn't even exist. And she made a lot of decisions where she put him before you and your siblings, and you felt some kind of way, and you decided as a little kid that when I get married, I will never do that. I will never put a man before my kids. Now you got saved. You got saved. And you got a kid or you got kids and you're married and you still subscribing to the same thing, that you said you would never do. And so now you're forgetting about the order.
Because that pain is driving.
That pain is driving you.
The
and
decision.
That pain is taking precedent over what's kingdom. Your pain can never take precedent over what's kingdom. You have to submit your pain to the king.
Yes.
And allow the king to heal your pain, so that you can subscribe to what's kingdom.
Yes, and we do that sometimes subconsciously. We don't even realize that is what is influencing our behavior. It is the past experiences that's influencing your thought concerning placement of my spouse and my children. And I'm not saying that there doesn't. Well, in all things, there is a priority. Yes, there is a priority in all things. And yes, and in all things, there is an order. But me giving my spouse what they need takes nothing away from my children.
Absolutely.
I am able to do both.
It's all of it.
It's
both and.
That's it.
It's both and. It's it is both and.
Yes, it's not a or. It's one or the other.
Yeah.
It is both and. Yes,
right.
Yes. I love that. I love when you say that. Yes.
I am. It's me. Loving you takes nothing away from God being number one in my life. That is the order.
It helps.
It helps. Me loving my children takes nothing away from you being second in my life next to God. And so it's both and. So why do we grieve that? And oftentimes you just mentioned it. We grieve it because it comes from a place of pain. It comes from a place where you don't really understand. And listen,
neglect,
when you give your life to the Lord, you can't lean to your own understanding anymore.
Yes.
When you give your life to the Lord, you have to be transformed by the renewing of your mind.
Yes.
So oftentimes, brothers, oftentimes, ladies, this is a process of being transformed by the renewing of your mind to where you may not be there yet because you had a different view. And now you have to submit that view to the Lord and be transformed to say, you know what, I have to change placement because my kids have taken precedent over my husband.
Yes.
Now you got a boyfriend? Yes. Your children take precedent over your boyfriend.
Absolutely.
We're talking about in the kingdom, you're married to this man.
Yes. A committed
vice
relationship.
versa, even a man that's married to, because some men, they have a child, they have kids, and they get married, and they like, yeah, my kids come first.
Yeah.
I'm gonna make sure because my kids' parents not in their life, and so I'm overprotective of my children, and I'm a helicopter dad, and I'm not gonna let anybody come in here and mess this up. And so I'm gonna treat them different. Those things are important to really discuss on the front end, and we hadn't even really dealt. And we'll deal with some of it now, but just a blended family. When you're dealing with a blended family, because we were really talking from a standpoint of we both, the kid, they're about we're really talking from a standpoint of them being our biological children.
Correct.
But now when the issue happens oftentimes, because even when they're your biological kids, there's concerns.
Yep.
You know, we have to work through it.
Yep.
It's not that we get a pass because,
Yep.
oh, these are our biological kids and,
Yep.
and you never put the kids before me or I never
Yep.
put the kids before you. We have to really work through that.
Yep.
Because sometimes I felt like, well, what you got going on?
Yes.
What you doing?
Yes.
And so when it's not your biological children, you really have to be intentional in
Yes.
working and shifting that placement.
Yes.
Because before your spouse came, they were your number one outside of God. And now your spouse is here, it has to shift. And it shifting doesn't take anything from them.
It takes
It means that,
nothing.
hey, in the order of priority is God. This is the structural order in our home.
Yes.
Everything must have structure.
Yes.
And it doesn't
Yes.
take away any love that I have for you.
Yes.
It's just, this is the structure. God, my spouse, my children.
Yes.
Now, we're going to talk a whole lot about how we respond to our children. Because once you get married, it's not just your children anymore. It's our children.
Correct.
How do we deal with them?
Correct.
How do we said before on one podcast that we'll jump our kids.
Absolutely.
We'll jump our kids.
Absolutely.
Like
and I love them. I love them
With everything.
so much. I love them. But I will jump them.
Yeah.
I will jump them.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so it's that dialogue to where we really have to talk. If you're dating somebody
Yep.
and they have children, or you're dating someone and you have children, and that's not the other individual's children, invest a lot of time
Yep.
in conversing about
Yes.
how you all are going to raise the kids together.
Yes. And I mean, talk about
Everything.
everything. Like nothing can be off limits. I need to know what you expect from me.
And not just the honeymoon. We in love. Oh,
Let's
yeah,
not talk about it
You know,
because
this
we're
my
in
kid.
love.
This my he my
Let's
kid
not-
just like he your
listen.
kid. I love that boy. No,
and
that
you
little boy.
do.
That
And
little
you
boy ain't gonna be
do.
cleaning up sometime. He ain't gonna want to get in the
Yes.
shower. He gonna
Yes.
be nasty.
He gonna
and
leave
so
his socks
that's right.
all on the floor,
And you want to deal with
underwear.
that. How
Yeah.
you gonna deal with that?
Who's
because
gonna say
because
something
with
to
your
him?
biological kid, you beat his tail. Now with
Okay.
her biological kid, you want to beat his tail too.
Right.
And she's like, I don't want you beating his tail.
Correct.
Because see, before they get married, you ain't seeing this. Before y'all get married, you ain't seeing the boy not taking
Yeah.
a shower.
Yes.
You ain't seeing this stuff all over the
Yes.
floor. So now the way you handle the business is you beat. The way she handled the business, now we go to timeout. Y'all got to talk about this.
Yes.
How we gonna handle this?
Absolutely. And I have seen in those relationships, it's so many different dynamics because you will have a mom who, again, there's some underlying issues at play, who will be all consuming with their children. And when you bring that into a marriage, be it biological children or be it a blended family, consumption with anything is overkill, and your children even feel the overconsumption.
Yep, come on.
So you're thinking that, oh, I'm just really loving on him in this season or loving on her in this season, and it's like, no, it is an overconsumption, and that is dangerous. It is very, very dangerous. At some point, we will have to talk and really delve into parenting, but it is anything that consumes because when you're overconsumed, it is everything you think about. You are consistently in a state of thinking about them, thinking about their future, thinking about their needs, thinking about their wants. You're meeting things for them that your child that you don't even know that they have. You are constantly mindful of what they need. And that overconsumption is dangerous. It's dangerous for you as a parent because all it does is we tend to say, oh, I'm just falling more and more in love with my child. Or I'm just loving them so much. And yes, you better love on them kids. Give them everything that they need. I didn't say want. I said everything that they need. All the love, all the care, all the nurturing, all the hugs, the kisses, all of that. And some of this comes down to how we define some of this. But that's dangerous because you have a spouse that's sitting over in the corner like, dang, I wish I could get that. I wish you would think about me during the day. I wish you would think about or anticipate what I need, what I want. And again, when we say things like this, sometimes a small little bit would be taken out. And see, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm talking about. And I'm saying, listen, if that is the case, for the woman or the wife that is overly consumed with their children, remember that you have a spouse that also has needs. Now, as a new mom, it is much easier to meet the needs of my small children than it is to meet the needs sometimes of my spouse because you require a different tap in. I can naturally just love on my kids and sit and play with them and talk to them and be there, and we can play dress up and we can play cars and we can wrestle a little bit. We can do these things, and it doesn't require it requires things from me, but it's a different type of return. For my spouse, it sometimes requires that I have to either be I have to forgive. I have to not be, have to have worked through an offense, or I have to give from a different place. Sometimes it's because I have to give physically. I have to give of my physical body, and that requires more. But it is, again, it's not one answer. Every season, we have to stay light on our feet, and we have to maneuver whatever season we are in at this moment. So again, for the mom who is just consumed, sis, we got to be careful with that. If it's the dad that's overly consumed, we have to be very, very careful with that, because all of the thought time, all of the energy that you're giving to ensuring your child gets what they need, you have a spouse over here that's feeling some type of way. And if you are that spouse that feels like your wife or your husband is giving everything to the children, then a conversation, regardless, needs to be had, because sometimes they're unaware.
Absolutely. Sometimes
your spouse is unaware. Well, you know how I feel. You know that you're not spending time with me. You know that you're not doing this. You know that you're not doing that. But if something else has my attention, sometimes I might be unaware. But again, we have to be big girls and big boys, and we have to say, hey, I'm feeling some type of way. We aren't spending time. I would love for us to spend more time together. I would love for us to spend time together alone. I would love for us to go on a date, or let's bring back our date night or date day, or let's do this and let's do that. And being careful even in the talking about it, that it's not accusatory. You both love your child. We both love our child. Right now, we're just allowing this new season that we're in to consume us. And we've got to pull back, because baby girl and baby boy will grow up. And the longer you stay in the routine of sometimes of overconsumption, you continue with that thing throughout the years. And then you look up and Keisha and Johnny have gone off to school, and now you're looking at your spouse like, dang, we spent all our time focused on our kids, and now we rebuilding. And then you have the other mom or dad who is, I'm just waiting. These kids came at a time in my life, and although I love them and I appreciate them, I'm looking for a spouse. I'm waiting on a spouse. I can't wait for me to get a man. I can't wait for me to get a woman. And I will gladly move my kids down to second or third because I got my man. And I'm just grateful to be in this, and I don't mess this up for me. Don't you got a problem with my kids? You got a problem with, I can fix that. They don't have to be here. I can do something else with them. And now it's going the other way. And now it's creating and cultivating this neglect in our children and rejection in them.
You can't just bring that up in doing this podcast. And then we have to transition to another topic, because see, that is a whole nother podcast within itself. I
realize it. I know.
Because now you got this lady. Because see, in brothers, that's a red flag.
Yes.
To where she's so desperate for a man,
yes,
that she will put them on the back burner any day. She's looking to put them on the back burner.
Yes.
If you don't like kids, or if you don't have kids and you coming into the marriage, she want to make sure that the kids are not a distraction from where her goal is.
Yes.
That's just trifling.
Yes.
So that's a whole difference. We're not saying that to where, hey, he comes in, you ready to just throw your kids. You don't throw them away.
Please,
because
don't
that communicates something to that man about you.
Yes.
And he doesn't want a trifling woman. He wants someone that love their kid, that nurture their kid, but understand priority that once you all get married, hey, listen, there has to be a lot of communication, a lot of dialogue, and you got to take on ownership in them like they're your own.
Yes. And I know some people have problems with the terminology first, which says that there will be a last, or there is a second or a third, when it's maybe just take that out of your vocabulary altogether and just say, I'm prioritizing. Yeah. So who comes first? My spouse comes first. And I equally not I equally, but I also love my children.
We
Me
talked about-
loving you
yeah.
takes nothing away from me loving my kids, and vice versa.
And see, we talked about that even, just when we talked about my mom.
Yes.
Parents,
siblings.
yes. Like my mama, like me and my mama tight. Like
Yes.
that's my girl.
And I love that. I
And-
love that y'all are tight.
and but you understand how tight we are.
Yes.
And my mama, I had to do a great job of communicating, conveying to my mama, listen, me loving this woman don't take nothing away from my love
Yes.
toward you.
Yes.
But where you was that person,
Yes.
that number one girl,
Yes.
she's that number one girl.
Yes.
And you still my dog, my roadie. And
Yes.
how you gonna love this woman and she can leave tomorrow? Well, guess what? If she left tomorrow, guess what?
Yes.
Then you'll be my number one girl.
And let's
You
stop
know-
there. Let's stop.
Okay.
Because that's at the core, I think, of one of the things at the core at some of this. When you hear that, it triggers something in, I think, some of these individuals. Like, it's triggering something that made me feel no way. Like, I felt absolutely nothing. Even when you initially, me seeing us dating, I saw how tight you and your mom was. I didn't take that as an offense. I didn't look at that like, oh, I'm not going to have any place in his life. Oh, none of that. It was you having the ability to love her that way was like, oh, I love that. I absolutely love that. That means you have a healthy relationship with your mother, which
very
means
important.
that, hey,
Come on, say it.
you
girl.
will likely have a very healthy relationship with me because there are some foundational things that's already been taken care of. So that triggered nothing in me. Even now, you prioritize her. She's not number one. She's not even number two. But does she feel like you don't give her time?
come
She
on.
doesn't feel like that.
Yeah.
Again, it is prioritizing.
That's why the Bible said a man will leave his father and mother and be united to his wife.
Yes.
And the two shall become one flesh.
Yes. Yes.
It don't say the man will leave his mother and father and be united to his kids,
Yes.
to his job.
Yes.
It's to his wife.
Yes.
So she take precedent over, and he take precedent, your husband, over any relationship.
So, in one of those pieces, when you mentioned if you left, that it's that some of us, especially if we've already been married before or we're coming into it with a blended family, why the reason the prioritizing is such an issue with you is because you see it as either not a lifelong commitment or you don't look at it as if you don't, it's how you're looking at marriage. Why get married if I'm not going to put my spouse in the place of priority where they belong? If I don't want to place you first, why am I getting married?
Because some people, like what you mentioned, they don't come in with the right perspective, and they come in very fluid and light on their feet. You're light on your feet about marriage, and if it don't work, you a bounce.
I'm out of
There's
here.
no true commitment.
outta here.
It's no to death do us part.
And that affects and will affect the relationship, because in my mind, I have reasonings, even if they're not coming out of my mouth and I'm not verbalizing them, I still have reasonings for, I'm going to throw them twos at you. If you do X, Y, Z, I'm out of here. And now I'm functioning with these contingencies in the back of my mind. And we think that what I am subconsciously functioning and moving and maneuvering around is not going to affect my present day relationship. If I know that I'm not going to do, if I know that if this or this happened, then I'm out. I'm not going to be able to do this. Why get into something that requires all of you to make work? You get in it and say, now, I believe some of us don't know that it's going to take all of you in order to make marriage work. But we get into it and say, I'm only going to give 75 and think that I'm going to have fruitful, thriving, abundant, flowing marriage. I'm going to have a fruitful, abundant, thriving, oh my gosh, awesome marriage. No, it's going to require all of you to do that. I don't get it. Like, we get into the marriage, and honestly, I don't get it now. But I could see early on in our marriage some of the reserve, the hesitancy, the what if I get hurt? What if this doesn't work? What if I get into this and he hurts me? Listen, in marriage, your feelings will be hurt. You will experience sometimes an offense by your spouse. You will experience hurt feelings, hurt hard. You're going to experience some of these things in marriage. So, but it's a part of it. Now, some things we're not going to, a heartache can be brought on by you hurt my feelings about something, or there is a disappointment. When we get into other things like abuse, adultery, those are different levels of heartache and heartbreak and drama and things like that come into a marriage. But I mean just human, because we're two individuals, we're two humans. There will be opportunities and times for forgiveness. Yeah. There will be times when you have to overlook certain things. There will be times when something may hurt my feelings or I feel some type of way about something, because we're two human beings. Again, we have become one, and now we're walking out that oneness, and that requires things from us.
Listen, baby, we have to stop right now.
Okay.
We have to do a part 2.
Okay,
this is good. We got to do a part 2 for next week.
All right.
It wasn't even our intention on doing a part 2, but this is good, and we got some more in the tank.
Yes. So that said, guys, that's all we have for today. And don't just start in love,
but stay in love.
See y'all next week, y'all. Thank you for listening to the Still in Love podcast. We hope that you have enjoyed this episode and it has indeed blessed your life. If it has, we need you to do 3 things for us. 1, we want you to subscribe to this podcast on your favorite platform, so that way you can be notified when a new episode drops. Number 2, we want you to review it. Click on that 5-star and let us know how much you enjoyed it. We absolutely love feedback here at the Still in Love podcast, and this helps us to make sure that we are scratching where there's an itch. And number 3, we want you to share it with a friend or family member. Also, if you have a question, we'd love to hear it and even talk about it right here on the podcast. You can submit those questions at stillinlovepodcast.com. You can also connect with us on Facebook and Instagram at Innovation Church Memphis, and on TikTok at We Are Innovation. Until next time, peace.
Don't just start in love,
but stay in love.
Thanks for tuning in to Still in Love podcast.